Okay, so how's it, everyone? And welcome to today's discussion. Hope you're all well and healthy and adapting to the new norm that we face at the moment. My name is Stefan Boerter from Rainmaker Marketing, and you may know, but this is our 9th property webinar that we posted since lockdown started at the end of March. And thanks again for all of you for making the time today. We've had another exceptional response to today's discussion, and it's really awesome, obviously based on the fact that we are fortunately back into motion when it comes to the economy. So we all got busy schedules. And yeah, I think obviously credit to the panel we've got and discussion we want to cover. But we've just come off the back of National Arbor Week, as many of you would know. And we're constantly reminded at the moment in terms of the crippling effect that load shedding has on our day-to-day lives, but also on the economy. So I really feel that today's topic is very relevant in light of that. And just a bit of context is 3 years ago, I was in Dubai and was fortunate enough to attend a presentation done by the Sustainable City of Dubai and was totally blown away in terms of what they had achieved. At the time, I think they were the first or one of the first net zero energy developers in the country or in the world actually, and certainly the first in the UAE and the Gulf. I think just to mute, I think someone's just getting someone's camera that's got background. Anyway, and then so it was just obviously absolutely fascinated in terms of how they treated sustainability, innovation, traffic management, and just general integration of communities. And the fascination extended to how could we look at smart city trends internationally and how could those potentially be adopted into transforming the landscape of developments within this country. So today we're really going to look at the best smart cities or some of the best smart city examples internationally and really look at how those could be elemented into or integrated in South African environments. I know Lucas, just before the chat, was talking about a point of departure. Everyone's got a different point of departure. Every country's got different dynamics to work with, but almost looking at how is this possible and what does a smart city consist of. So today we've got 2 international smart city developers. We've got 2 large-scale South African developers, and then we've got 2 entities who made a significant impact on driving sustainability within residential development landscapes. So I want to get on to hearing what they have to say as quickly as possible. So just to introduce our panel, and I'm going to start with the 2 international panel members who we are delighted to have on board and really, really grateful for their time. You can see who's international because they've got suits on. You can see who's African because they don't. But firstly, just I think Karim Al-Jassir, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer for the Sustainable City in Dubai. So this is the first net zero energy development in Dubai and the Gulf. And incredible in terms of what they've created and what they've integrated, and a model that we've used so often in discussion with developers. Like this is almost for us is the perfect integration of how energy can be created and everything down to treatment of grey water, etc. And then Samuel Derjazini, did I pronounce it right?
Yes, perfect.
Close enough. Who's the General Manager of Marcus Smart City in Mauritius. So those of you who don't know, Mauritius really has been innovators when it comes to the concept of smart cities within Africa. And the Marcus Smart City is the first smart city within Southern Africa. So again, welcome, gents, and really great to have you on this panel. And then to Georgina Smith, who's the Head of Market Transformation for the Green Building Council of South Africa. And just a bit of context, the Green Building Council operates across commercial, residential, and public sectors to basically drive environmentally sustainable designing, building, and implementation. So it's significant in terms of this whole movement towards transformation and innovation across the whole sector. Then Steve Brooks, who's the CEO of Bowen Properties. I don't think Bowen Properties needs much introduction, but it is quite interesting to note that last week they announced what is potentially the largest sectional type development in the world, which is 50,000 apartments. And really significant and aligned to the previous discussions we've had around how we can unlock greater property ownership in this country. So very, very significant in that sense. And then Charles Thompson, who's the Managing Director of the Devemco Group. And Devemco are the driver behind the Bicoastal Precincts, which is one of the major catalytic mixed-use developers from the country. And also the visionaries behind the Mshloti Smart Village concept. So how's it, Charles? And then Lucas Ace, who's the Managing Director of Ace & White's Landscape Architects. I've often mentioned that I think Lucas is a genius when it comes to transforming landscapes. but he's personally been responsible for award-winning master planning across Africa and the UAE. So I think a really diverse panel in terms of skill sets and expertise, and obviously really excited to hear what the guys have to say. And we really encourage questions. So I know there are already 1 or 2 questions coming through, but if you've got questions, please pose them. We want to incorporate them as many as we can into the discussion. And if you've got a question for a specific panel member, feel free to mention who it is, and I'll just direct it to the guys. And we'll try to get through as many as we can in the session. We're going to keep it to maximum 60 minutes. And we know you've all got busy schedules. And we will be doing a recording of this. So if you want to share it on a later stage to people who weren't able to attend, or friends or colleagues and so forth. So we'll be sending a mail pretty soon after this discussion. So I think to get going, Samuel, one of our international guests, I'm going to start with you. I think really to kick off a bit of context in terms of what is a definition of a smart city as we see it, and what sets this concept apart from just another large development.
Okay, thank you, Stefan, and good morning, everyone. So I'm myself involved in the smart city concept for only a few years now, and my own understanding of the concept is constantly evolving. So obviously, the smart city concept integrates the notions of sustainability and technology as pillars, but those 2 main pillars should be considered at the design stage, the master planning of the city itself, but also in the management of the city during its day-to-day life. So technology and sustainable initiatives must remain focused, from my point of view, towards achieving a better quality of life, new economic opportunities, and citizen engagement. There should be a real mean in the usage of technology, but also in the implementation of those sustainable initiatives.
Okay.
So there are different approaches depending on the countries and the context, obviously. In Mauritius, we have now a few smart city projects that have been unlocked through a new regulatory framework done by the government, but these are all projects from the private sector. So those are private cities, let's say, in Mauritius. And in the case of Mocha Smart City, we are in fact expanding an existing suburb which already exists in the center of the island. So we are engaged now for a decade now in a city smarting approach, meaning that we are implementing initiatives as and when the legal framework permit us to do so, and the technologies being implemented and the best practices we are being inspired of. So in Mocha now, the citizens have access to a lot of initiatives around energy management, waste management, water reuse, soft mobility, citizen engagement program, green buildings. So there are now a lot of components of a smart city concept which are now being implemented in phases.
So you spoke about that city smarting. Is
Yes.
that inspired by concepts from around the world?
Yes, a few. In fact, basically, as we are not a greenfield project, we already have an existing suburb with existing people living and working there. We have a continuous improvement approach of city smarting, meaning that we are implementing by phases some of the best practices we are being inspired all around the world to implement and to change their lifestyle in a progressive mode rather than a disruptive mode. So let's say in terms of their usage, the way they are used to manage water or energy or their waste, it's a smooth transition towards a smarter lifestyle. That's the way we see it from a Mauritian perspective.
Okay. Lebogang, I know that there's a question that came through from you, very relevant. We're going to get to that in a second. Karim, I just want to bring you in here in terms of, I mean, we could talk for days about concepts in terms of what's been done, but I know your whole principle around sustainability is built on three things: it's social, environmental, and economic. Can you just elaborate briefly on those?
Yes, so absolutely. You know, we always say that, and what you saw perhaps 3 years ago in Dubai, we don't, you know, we didn't reinvent the wheel. And our concept was initiated about 12 years ago when this was a wake-up call for us as a developer back in 2008 when all the markets plummeted and imploded. And so we knew that we had to develop something that's more viable, and then this became known as more sustainable. And there was a lot of learning. So as Samuel said, you know, the sustainability and then the smart dimension is really a continuous journey. And we traveled a lot, east and west, California, Fujisawa, Freiburg, Eden project. And we visited and we spoke with many people, and then we put all those great ideas into one space, and then we dissected it. And some of us, you know, if we go back to textbooks, you know, we are perhaps more accustomed to saying people, planet, profit. Same thing, right? Social, environmental, economic. And so I'd like to pull up just 2 slides to convey in few words and with 2 slides what it is that we have achieved and the approach. Can you see my screen?
Yes, can see it.
All right. So absolutely, our philosophy from day one has been to approach sustainability in its 3 dimensions, its 3 pillars. It is about the people. And when we say social, for us as a developer, when you dissect it, it is about wellness, it's about education, it's about inclusion, it's about empathy, sports, all these dimensions that contribute to social sustainability. Environmental sustainability, I will show you the next slide, how we as a developer and architects and planners, how we dissect it. And economic sustainability is ultimately, if we are building those new cities, be it smart or more smart or less smart, well, they have to be economically viable. And that's very much country dependent and based on the geography and the socio-economic context of every society. And so when it comes to environmental sustainability, for us, this is what we do. We break it down into 6 strategies. We believe that all communities, all cities have to produce food, contribute towards food security. That's very country dependent. Do we get into eggs? Do we get into dairy? Or is it just leafy greens and strawberries and fruits? That's very country dependent. It's about energy and how to approach, how to be aligned with the Paris Agreement and reduce our energy and carbon footprint through demand-side management and renewable energy uptake, eventually storage. It's about water management, be it groundwater, desalinated water, which is our case and very energy intensive, and then followed by treatment and reuse. It's about building something that's greener, so low embodied carbon. It's about embracing the future of mobility, from slow travel, you know, slow mobility, walking, biking, etc., to micro mobility, and then to car sharing, electrification, autonomous driving, etc. And then lastly, it's about waste management and how do we reduce our waste production trends, and how do we recycle and reuse. And all of that ultimately, and coming back to the smart dimension, all of that can now benefit from being smarter. So I like the expression, you know, we need city smarting, because 10 years ago when we were planning this city, you know, technology was very different, either available but not accessible or too expensive. But with every year that goes by, and this is what I see in my position, I see so much technology coming our way, but we really have to understand technology. It doesn't always work. And so we want technology to work for people and for society. And I think in this one slide, what I try to convey is that a sustainable community or a sustainable development can benefit from being smarter. And then by adopting some technologies, we can enhance efficiencies in social, environmental, and economic development. And so this is just a mishmash of different systems that we employ today. They were not necessarily accessible 10 years ago. So there is always this evolution. And I think I'll just wrap up by saying that our approach to sustainability continues to evolve, And I think we need to look at smart cities and future cities as living laboratories, all of them. There is so much testing and so much trial going on, and we have to learn. We have to continue to learn and exchange those lessons. I will stop sharing.
And then Karim, just one more question for you on that. So one of the things that really struck me about Sustainable City was that your monthly maintenance cost to owners is zero. I mean, in South Africa, we refer to it as a levy. I mean, how do you make that possible?
Okay, so absolutely. So for us as a developer, and I think it's the same for you in South Africa, you know, people are very skeptical when you give them something that's beautiful. They're going to associate it with very high costs. So from day one, we said we're not selling and promoting sustainability at a premium. There should be no premium for sustainability because we all need to pivot. So it's one thing to keep construction costs down. That's really about understanding the market and being a good, strong builder. But then for end users, we also need to bring down the cost of living. And so we committed, and then I will tell you, you know, hindsight, you know, how we will do it again. But we committed from day one to a zero service fee, you called it levy, system for all investors and homeowners in Sustainable City. And how so? Well, one, we need to bring down the cost of operating a city, right? It's like your own pocket money. If you only have so much, you know, you want to reduce your expenses. So I'll give you one example. How do we do so? Well, we have a productive landscape that's going to produce food. Well, that's income that can perhaps offset the cost of managing the landscape. We have so far 8.2 megawatts of solar panels installed. The monetary value of our annual production is about $1 million US. So that can feed straight into, again, managing the city. So we need to reduce the cost so that we can offset some of those expenses. And second, we also need to think about this, how can we become more circular? So ultimately, and this is what it boils down to, if it costs, in our case, 10 million dirham to operate the Sustainable City, to manage the Sustainable City per year, that's about $2.5 million US. We need to raise that money. And how do we raise that money? Well, the mixed-use development, which is not for sale in the Sustainable City, comprises apartment studios, commercial space, and offices. 30 to 40% of rental revenue goes to a pot, and that pot is used to offset management and service fees in the community. So we need to, but the trick is we need to maintain high occupancy so that we can guarantee the rental revenue. So hindsight, next time we do this, and we have a few in the pipeline, we need to kind of weave into it some kind of loyalty. So the more loyal you are as a resident to the offerings in your city, you get points for that, and that will be offset against your service charges. Because ultimately we need everybody to flourish, right? Everybody to succeed in the community, from the kindergarten. And just before joining this webinar, I was sitting with the head of the kindergarten who shut down February 28. She has had zero income. She normally has 160 kids. And obviously, how does she pay the rent? And if she doesn't pay the rent, then we don't get the money. Then it's difficult for us to offset those service charges. So obviously there is a ripple effect, or a domino effect, I should call it. So we have to be in it together. That's the circularity of maintaining and managing the community.
Okay. So Charles, I mean, obviously a pretty remarkable model. I mean, how much of it is achievable within the South African development context?
Yeah, well, thanks for the easy question, Steph. First of all, Karim, it's an amazing model. It sounds really complicated. And I was just looking at Steve, and he was just like, just the management of that must be another whole animal. But it's an amazing achievement.
Sorry, Charles, I was shaking my head because I think, sorry to butt in there, Charles, I think Karim, despite having very, very, very pleasant blue eyes, I think between those ears is one hell of a brain. And I'll just shake my head at what you're achieving, Karim. I think you're an absolute genius. And yeah, Charles, carry on. Sorry, I meant it in total respect.
It's a team.
It's actually a daunting milestone that's been thrown out. But Basically, yeah, look, there's a lot of those, as Karim has said, it's not an exact replication per country. Everything will be different, and it's going to be a matter of adding on what you can and subtracting from what you can't do, what's not affordable. As an example, our labor costs are substantially cheaper. So, we see ourselves doing a lot more labor-based management solutions than tech, just purely because the capital cost, can be quite unaffordable upfront for most developers. So, I think there's a lot of those items which we can definitely bring in, and we are slowly bringing them in. The easy ones like rainwater harvesting and solar and green roofs and green walls, and all those ones are quite easy. Smart vehicles, electric orientated vehicles, as well as carpooling and sharing and shuttle services, and that also quite easy. One of the things I've been battling with on my survey developments is the integration of nature into a security system. Security is very important, obviously, in South Africa. So it's an interesting dynamic that we've got, these let's call them estates that we're battling with to keep secure, and at the same time allow animals, bushbuck and that, to come in and out without affecting their migratory patterns, etc., etc. So it is a very diverse and complicated solution. I don't believe there's an answer to any one answer for any development across the world. But yes, I think we can integrate the bulk of what Karim's done. It's just, will our market pay for it up front? And are we sophisticated as a market enough to understand the value of it and pay a little bit more, but get a long-term, a much better product long-term? I think that's probably the question. And I'm not sure whether we're there yet.
And Steve or Charles, in terms of that cross-subsidization of costs that Karim spoke about, in terms of bringing down your monthly levy costs, how, is that a reality within a South African context?
No, Steph, sorry. I think Karim is an absolute genius. I need to get my bum to Dubai as quickly as possible and meet with them, because I think you're unbelievable. I've dreamt up this Crystal Lagoon idea and swam in Sheikh Maktoum's lagoon as a guest of his at Dubai One, and I'm always amazed by Dubai. And Karim, I think what you're doing is what we're begging to do in South Africa. In South Africa, we've got this horrible legacy of apartheid, which I'm very good friends with Mr. Ramaphosa and Dr. Corsi, and they've asked me to help and try and build effective housing for the previously disadvantaged people. And we're busy doing that. We're busy launching Mooikloof, which is 50,000 apartments. And I've got a couple of other smart mega cities. But I think with Karim's help, I'm quite fortunate in Baldwin that we've got scale. And if we could with a joint not a joint venture, with a joint, what's the right word, sharing of ideas, Karim. And Georgina knows we're very passionate about the Green Council. My dear wife won the award last year, and I'm gunning for it this year with our new head office. So Georgina, we're fighting very hard in our family. The poor architect was one of your judges last year, is actually doing the work for me on our new building. And I said, you've just got one condition, you've got to beat my wife. So Georgina, we're having a lot of fun with that. But no, seriously, Steph, that's why I like you so much. You bring a panel that's outstanding. Charles, we've got to get together next time I'm down there, and Lucas, and we know that. But Karim, I think if we can get, everybody hates paying what we call levies, Karim. It's the service fee, the levy. Yep. I've got property in London. It makes my eyes bloody water what I pay there. And if we can get, Steph, we've just been approached by the Germans on a massive electricity scheme through ionization, which I still don't quite understand. But that will basically mean that we can have continued electricity at a reduced fee. And there's a little bit of margin to make there, and the margin could go back and subsidize the levy. So, Steph, if we can deliver 499 homes, 499 to 799 for the masses, and tell them they've got no levies, can you imagine what a difference that would make to this world? Yeah. And to make them totally sustainable. Mr. Ramaphosa, our president, has asked me, all our work has to be smart cities. So we've got, that's pretty easy to get right. I mean, that's pretty simple. But what Kiram has woke me up this morning, I just don't know why, but I just see a connection with you and the rest of the panel, you're interesting people. If we could somehow get South Africa to zero levies through getting these developments right, Steph, I mean, can you imagine marketing a development with no levies that's got permanent water, permanent electricity, a crystal lagoon, etc., etc. I'm also working with Tesla at the moment to see if we can bring Tesla back to South Africa. I know you've got Tesla, I presume you've got them in Dubai already, Karim.
We do.
Yeah,
we do.
so, yeah, remember, you know, no, I'm just saying the Tesla cars, because, you know, Steph, you know, Elon Musk and myself, Mr. Ramaphosa and Elon are getting on a call to try and drag him back here with a bit of his money and get Tesla cars going. So there's a fantastic collaboration here, Steph, that I think, you know, I know you're doing phenomenal work on this panel, which is for the public, and thank you for inviting me. You know, we're the humble bricklayers. But, you know, I think the collaboration between us all, because the technology is out there. But, you know, and we also, you know, I've always believed in sharing, you know, Charles, and you know, if we get something that's good, we should share it, and, you know, not just keep it a, you know, I love these NDAs. You know, I absolutely hate them, Karim. You know, when they ask me to sign an NDA, I say, yeah. I mean, the other day I signed an NDA in The Hague with a 25,000 euro penalty. My partner said, "You're going to have to pay that penalty very quickly," because, you know, we should be sharing this to the world. Yeah. I mean, the Green Building Council that Georgina heads up, I mean, we've done some outstanding work with mortgage reductions and things, and that isn't state secret. It's open for everybody. So, Steph, you know, this panel is exceptional, and Bourne are fully committed. We've got some massive scale coming up in Paardevlei is enormous. Mooikloof is the start of it, believe it or not, is 50,000. It's going to go much bigger. We've got the beautiful little town called Klapmuts, which is Stellenbosch Bridge, that we're doing with an exceptional landowner. There's a lot more coming. We've got Nelspruit coming, and we should all be collaborating to get this world a better place. I mean, I know, Georgina, through Edge and the Green Building Council, that's your design. But, you know, Karim, we need to jump on a plane and stay in one of your fabulous hotels there, and we need to learn, and hopefully, God forbid, if we could maybe teach you something. Sorry, not teach you, assist with something. You know, and the Germans. I mean, I love the Germans. I just think the Germans are unbelievable to deal with. So we're busy dealing with them at the moment. Unfortunately, I speak German, but it helps a little bit, but not too much. And Mauritius, I mean, you guys are doing, sorry?
I'm going to chip in to talk about the GBCSA and green buildings, and how definitely they're not just for, and I think this responds to Lebohang's question, it's not just for the elite, and often with net, there's the perception that it's for the elite. If you think about the energy burden that low-income households experience in relation to middle-income households, net zero thinking, sustainable design helps to alleviate those kind of constraints and those kind of pressures for that segment of the market far better comparatively. So this is really about thinking about how we're going to build it back better, how we are going to have a recovery that is green, that is sustainable, and even net zero really actually brings a lot of benefits to the poor. It's not only on energy efficiency kind of bills, but when you look at the type of building and the quality and the level of quality of building that you've got to deliver a very comfortable building, because that's the key issue with net zero to get it right. You don't want to compromise on thermal comfort. So you're still delivering on thermal comfort, but doing it in an energy efficient way. And that obviously translates into a lot of health benefits. So I just wanted to get that in quickly before I forget.
Yeah, Georgina, sorry, obviously I'm not a communist nor am I a socialist, but you know, the wealthy can actually afford to pay for things. It's the lower income people that need the help. You know, your wealthy people in Dubai, Karim, I mean, they don't actually if you ask most of them, they wouldn't even know how much electricity costs because they can afford it. But here in South Africa, we've got people that really, really do struggle. And thank heaven we've finally got a president that has started this infrastructure development, which is fantastic. He's got 100 billion rand, that he's got a nice little war chest to get it out there. And, you know, the big thing is he wants to get it to the right people. You know, there's so many people out there that need title and they need housing. And that's why, Georgina, you know, we enrolled 16,000 apartments last year, and we're going to continue doing more.
The biggest global certification. A lot of people don't know that. I mean, it was obviously big for South Africa, but it was the biggest global
thank you. And we're going to continue because, you know, it's not just Sheikh Maktoum that needs to have a nice triple insulated wall. You know, we need to also get it down to people that are paying us 499 Rand, Karim. That's Rand, eh? Not dollars, eh? So, you know, there's a big drive for us, Stefan, big. And so far in this country, all the RDP housing hasn't been very well done. So, you know, we need to get internet to every single house, and we need to get it properly.
So, and I think just for the benefit of viewers, sorry, Steve. So just for the benefit of you, so Lebogang posted the question: is smart city an elitist concept, and is there a way of justifying prioritizing smart city projects in the face of rapid policy? And I think that's exactly the point. I mean, I know we spent the last couple of webinars we've done about how to make property investment more achievable and how to empower people with property ownership. And I think exactly what Steve and Georgina is saying is about how can you bring these costs down and how can you make it more achievable through developing at scale and through using innovation.
Yeah, Steph, I don't think a lot of people on this panel, maybe a few people do know that, you know, the average worker takes 4 taxis, changes taxis 3 times and takes 4 taxis to get to work, and then again in the evening. You know, you're looking at people that get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get home at probably 7:30, 8 o'clock. And then they get absolute fear. I mean, I spoke to one lady, because, you know, Steph, I can't help myself, at a jeweler shop, and she was terrified of coming late because, you know, then she's going to lose her job. So, you know, we've come up with a concept now of going for the air rights on all these shopping centers and to do affordable housing on top of them, which, you know, as you know, Steph, you're probably going to get involved with us in it. And, you know, that is the kind of thing we've got to look at. And, you know, they've got to be obviously properly done. But can you imagine that poor lady that doesn't have to swap 3 times and take 8 taxis to and from work every day? Yeah, I mean, I don't think even Karim, even you in a sophisticated city, when you take an Uber, are taking 8 Ubers a day. You know, it's a real
income that is spent on travel.
Lucas, I know you want to come in there.
You know, just joining there with all the other previous speakers, I think that mobility is possibly the most cost non-efficient industry at the moment in the world. And if we look at how certain cities, smart cities, actually working towards, let's say, mobility, special kind of systems. And at the moment, Singapore is known for the best mobility city in the world. 11% of Singapore's people has got vehicles or vehicle ownerships. So what it's all about, it's really about walkways. It's some of the walkways cross 60 meters above highways to link up other pedestrian links. It's one of the most beautiful things there is the Henderson Bridge. It's actually become a social spot. You can actually take your pet cat and put it on the bridge and leave it there while you go jogging. So it's all about quality of living and link up of systems of mobility. You talk about cycling, you talk buses, ferries, cable cars. I mean, Singapore's got them all. And here and it all sits in your master plan. If your master plan is well developed, you could actually reduce so much cost in central, call it internal estate transport or city transport that can be sponsored by so many other things. Going back to just the business model. And, you know, we talk about the income that Karim, with the income that you generate with other industries. In Abu Dhabi, most of the properties belong actually to the royal family, but they actually give you the land for free, but the ground floor has to be mixed use, and the income of that goes back to the royal family. So I think we need to reposition or think about our business models and say, how do we make this sustainable long term? It's not to grab and rape the whole project initially, but to rather see how we make it sustainable long term.
Well, Lucas, sorry, Steph, you'll be very proud of the fact that we've just had fantastic dealings with the municipality in Gauteng, in Johannesburg, where they've allowed us to reduce our parking to 1 in 10 apartments, but we've had to put 100 bicycles on the project. So Lucas, next time you come up to Joburg, you can ride a bicycle with me around Sandton, and we'll get my dear friend Rabbi Mazinta to join us.
I'd love to do that. Anthony Fritz Henry is developing bicycles in the Cape, and actually you earn your bike, but he gives it to schools, but just by cleaning their own kind of sport fields or their own property. So there is a kind of a new way of just look at things.
So Georgina, I'm going to come back to you in a second, but Lucas, I know when Kareem mentioned growing food on site, I think you probably got quite excited. I know that's one of your passions, but how do you think the landscapes within smart cities in South Africa can evolve?
Well, you know, you can never beat mega farmers. The mega farmers is there and they've got a place, but I think what we need to do in our new design estates and cities is to create the motion and the emotion of being agricultural, because this is what grounds us really to Mother Nature, and we'll be much more sensitive in all the other aspects. So if there are small forests or small crops or vertical pyramids of green, it all depends on the socioeconomics of the area we're in. But it's so important to actually bring this back. We were totally dislocated from nature, and we need this on different levels and all around us.
Okay.
So, you know, yeah.
May I add to this?
Yeah.
Absolutely, the mega farmers, we're not in the business of mega farming, but cities, they take on a different purpose and a different, certainly a different purpose when we engage in farming activities, when it comes to education, caring for the planet. And also there's a growing business case for urban farming. The technology is coming to us, right? Vertical farming, climate control, very small spaces where you multiply production by 10 and 20, you reduce water consumption by 90%. I know you have an acute water crisis in South Africa. So mega farming is also being challenged, and we have to produce much more with much less. And cities can contribute. They're not going to replace it, but can contribute. Just on the point of affordability, lower income and poverty, I think we need to change a bit our mindset as well when it comes to new cities and smart cities, is that we have to consider off-grid solutions. And again, technology is making this possible for us. So off-grid in a country as big as South Africa, you're not always on the grid, right? And extending the grid to you, be it food or water, electricity, is very expensive. And ultimately the developer has to pay for it, which means the consumer, the buyer, the tenant. So we have to begin to understand and embrace what it means to be an off-grid community. And that leads to production. So yes, people cannot afford electricity. Well, they have to produce their own electricity. And solar has become, it's dead cheap today, hands down. It beats any other energy source locally. We can also get into water making locally from humidity. We can get into food production locally. So our philosophy is we have to promote more local living, or living locally. And living locally means you don't need to commute so much. You don't need the 4 taxis. The problem with our cities today, including Dubai, is that it's so stretched. And so you decide to work in Business Bay, but you live in Sustainable City. That's 40 kilometers each way. That's conceptually wrong. We have to, and some people commute to Abu Dhabi every day. That's even worse, right? Can you imagine doing 250 kilometers every day in a car, single occupancy? So we have to create cities that create jobs as well. And that will definitely change the mobility landscape. And the one thing that I see positive coming from COVID, it's that, it's the bicycles are back, they are retaking, right? Colonizing setbacks in urban space. We're now enlarging the bike lanes. Micromobility is now more welcome and more accommodated. And so all of that comes together to make cities more livable.
And I guess when guys, like you alluded to earlier, when guys start doing the calculations of the cost saving of not owning vehicles, for example, not paying insurance in vehicles, not paying petrol as opposed to other forms, it's significantly low. And I think if we can get that mindset shift, that could be something that could evolve in South Africa. I think that'd be a game changer.
So when
other challenges too.
When Tesla reaches you in South Africa, absolutely, I don't think, and we admire Tesla, but it's not about each one of us owning an electric vehicle. That's the end of mankind, I think, right? We have to get into electric vehicle car sharing. So if 9 people on average, 9 to 10 people can share one car, that's the way forward.
100%. Well, let's see if we can get Tesla to South Africa, Karim.
Sorry, just a quick one, Steph. Just the other thing I wanted to just add in here, one of the big pushes from developers, and Steve will talk into this as well, is we've got to be very mindful of creating jobs. And when you start talking 50,000 units, and myself looking at about 4,000 at the moment, it's for us in South Africa is creating these green jobs, which is a word people are hearing and talking about, which is starting up nurseries which feed into your own developments and other developments, forestry training camps, for example, where you can train up guys into weeding out alien invasives in our forests, and then taking schools through and training people up. So you're creating work, you're creating agricultural abilities. You can actually train guys through from starting a forestry or let's call it a nursery into landscaping jobs and all that. So that's part of our sustainable cities in this country is also going to be revolving around creating, jobs which are not just construction-based jobs, which last 2 years. We've got to be looking into long-term sustainability of jobs, which is a big, big one for us as developers. Steve, I don't know if you want to talk into that.
Yeah, we work with Professor Francois Verrouilly, who's a fantastic guy, on job creation. So we've got quite good models on it, and it's important, as you say, it's absolutely critical. Job creation is, and there's many, many ways to skin that cat and to make it more sustainable. Luckily our projects are quite long, so the job creation through the construction is quite a long cycle. But there's also continued spin-off from it, and we've always been committed to that.
Georgina, sorry. No, sorry. I just want to, and Lucas, I'll come back to you. Just a question. I was going to get just bring you in from a net zero carbon perspective, but a question that Rory Wilkinson has asked, and it's important we always put ourselves back to our context, is what is the role of the public sector in enabling sustainability? Municipalities, ESCOM, etc. Are they doing enough?
Great question. So yes, the public sector obviously has got a great role, and I think maybe the net zero story in South Africa, I don't know how aware everyone is about it. The conversation started about 3 years ago in earnest. The World Green Building Council had an advancing net zero program, and obviously the GBC is a member of the World Green Building Council, and there were two very key targets that were set. So the first target is that by 2030, any new building that you design needs to be able to operate at net zero carbon. And 2030 is not far away. So any projects that you're working on, 2030 is the cutoff date. They need to be operating, once they're built at net zero carbon. And then the more long-term goal is that by 2050, all existing buildings are net zero as well. So all of the stock, and then that's even extended now into kind of embodied carbon targets as well. So the GBCSA responded, and we developed training and certification tools and advocacy strategies in response to this drive for net zero. And we have got partnerships with the public sector. And I think there's some really interesting and valid initiatives that people should be aware of. And the first one is the C40 New Buildings Program. So each of the 4 major cities in our country have signed up to a commitment that they would like to put either bylaw or enabling policy or an enabling framework, so that from a municipal perspective, there are guidelines to actually make this a requirement, these 2 targets a requirement for all buildings. And the program has been very successful, and obviously they're at various stages of engagement. They're also trying to review what the financial feasibility is. And I think that has demonstrated immense leadership from a local government perspective. From a national level, the Department of Public Works obviously has issued the green building policy that was launched at the convention, the GBCSA convention in 2018. And there are various departments that are, either supporting policy or, supporting initiatives to do research. I think our challenge is implementing this at scale. So for example, we do have net zero carbon buildings in South Africa. We've got 16 net zero projects overall in South Africa. About half of them are related to carbon, and we've got about 9 or 10 in the pipeline that are carbon orientated. And they span, building typologies from residential to industrial and commercial offices. But I mean, it's clear from those numbers that, we're not reaching, net zero at scale, and particularly not on large kind of site-wide precinct, levels. So we do need stronger policy. We do need, and I think that the policy and the commitment is there. It's more about the enabling financial incentives and financial support to actually implement it at scale. And that's where the public sector, is trying, but needs to come in with more support.
But it can be done across mixed-use precincts.
Yeah,
Yes,
Steph, I think Georgina, we're going to end up owning half of those buildings that you're talking about.
Yes, Vaughan has
myself,
this leadership.
Yeah, do you know the biggest problem is, Georgina, and I maybe need to come give a talk on this, is that the stubbornness, I'm quite tough. I use the best professionals I can get my hands on, and I'm quite tough with my professionals, being quite outspoken and quite driven. And, and my brother's he's also quite good at this. And, the first thing, if you tell a professional team that you want to do a 6-star zero carbon building, the first thing they say is, how much have you got Karim's, Sheikh Makhtoum's budget? In other words, have you got more money than you know what to do with all respect, Karim? And my brother starts this and said to, all of you, all the professionals on the team can go to hell, and they better bring it in at a certain yield and a certain price and start thinking of a bit of innovation. They did it. And that's what we're doing now, Georgina. I do not think it costs a cent extra. My good friend Norbert Sasser and Estienne at Growth Point moan at me. They say, of course it does. I said, no, because your professionals are lazy. I said, you've got to work within your boundaries and get it right and make the building. I mean, our building on Call-It Drive it's probably one of the best in Call-It Drive. And that was bought in at a 15% day one yield, which is exceptional for that a small commercial building. And all our tenants are happy. We've got one of Lawrence Graff's bloody offshore shoot tax businesses. We've got some serious tenants in there. So, it's a tiny little, as Norbert says, yeah, but Steve, it's only 2,000 square meters. I said, it doesn't matter, it's the principle. So I think, Georgina, we need to educate people in South Africa that with the right professional team and guys like Lucas that are around, they can also kick some butt, Lucas, and get everybody moving, and be innovative like they are in Dubai. They're big on innovation there, because I don't believe it should cost any more money.
I think the approach to problem solving that fundamentally needs to change. In order to get net zero, you need an integrated design approach, and you've got to think about all your solutions holistically, think about what's available, how the building is situated within the site, how it can feed into neighboring buildings. So I have found, when I was in private sector, and I think the way often to position it when you're speaking to architects and engineers is to pose it as, a technical challenge, like, excite them, because I think that, the results are often really, really interesting, and the design process ends up being incredibly rewarding because it's not a copy and paste exercise. You really have got to think quite specifically about that building and what suits that site or, that development. And I think designers are trained in that, but, with obviously the kind of pressures associated with delivery, it kind of gets lost sometimes. And it's about reminding people about we need to do things differently.
We need more ladies, Georgina, that can do lateral thinking, how to balance budgets and buy those shoes at the same time.
Yep.
Samuel, I just want to quickly just bring you in here. So we spoke about delivery and we spoke about facilities all the way. Is there a secret within a smart city in terms of the order of delivery of facilities? I mean, do you go with things like schools and recreational areas first, and then does residential follow? Or, I mean, is there a certain balance to follow?
That's what we did from on our side, meaning that in fact in Mauritius the scale is really different compared to South Africa. We only have 1.3 million inhabitants with a real problem of spatial imbalance in the country. So like Karim was saying, there's a lot of people who are working in the capital and driving or taking public transport for hours between the place they live and the place they work. So our main objective by creating this new city and regrouping various activities was to try and minimize the travel time of people. So we started with schools. So we had a few schools of various Francophone schools, English schools, private schools, public schools. So we've started with it, and then retail, and then offices, and we are now getting the residential. We are now selling the residential side much faster than before, just because people don't need to drive anymore. And they could go to work or to the school or sports by cycling. So that's the way we planned it. So the master plan and the phasing of it is for me a critical element.
Okay. And Karim, did you find similar?
Actually, it was a bit the opposite. So for us, and that's the difference between us and Masdar City, which is more government driven in Abu Dhabi, where they started with the large businesses. They started attracting, the likes of Siemens and others. We started as a developer, you need to sell quickly, right? You need to sell off plans if you can. So we started with our 500 units, and then came the school, and then came the equestrian. And now that we just launched an autism village within the community, that's a whole industry as well, right? And the mixed use was perhaps in between. So I would say the sequence for us was residential, mixed use, and then all those specialized facilities followed. If I can just add on the point of zero energy, just from our experience, it boils down to, I think there's one metric that we all need to play with and have a conversation around, and that's the energy use intensity. So for us, we do energy modeling. We achieved we modeled for 90 kilowatt, that's 90 kilowatt hour per square meter per year. And then we achieved 95. I now have 3 years of data. The median is 95. So we're almost on target. In the case of South Africa, I'm sure you can go as low as perhaps 50, right? It's still 42 degrees Celsius outside here in Dubai. So that's why it's difficult to bring it down. But ultimately, that's what we need to bring down. And the zero energy carbon or net zero carbon or net zero energy development, for us, it applies more at the community level. And that's where housing becomes so interesting. So Steve, when you said 5,000 or 50,000 units?
50.
50, mind-boggling. So when you say 50,000, that becomes a fantastic challenge when it comes to zero energy, because I do not need to guarantee individual units to achieve zero energy, but I need the entire development to achieve zero energy. Because my solar farm is not on the villa. My solar farm is the parking outside or the rooftop of the school. The school, they shut down during the summer. Can I shift that electricity somewhere else, right? So we need multiple players to come together to achieve the net zero carbon or energy.
And Lucas, I think Karim mentioned it now, but I know with Sustainable City, every single shaded area, whether it be a balcony, whether it be a carport, down to the treadmill and the gym, it all creates energy. Do you think that is something we'll see a lot more of going forward within our context?
Stefan, we actually hope that, because those pergolas and carports and all can become fruit-producing elements. Can be granadellas, it could be whatever. There are many things. It could be oyster nuts from the Congo. There are so many things that we could use and not really at this stage as utilized. But I think what, just from the landscape side, I think what we decided on a small project, which is actually totally off the grid in Pretoria, it's only about 2,000 square meters and it sits in an existing Brooklyn community, where the developer decided to actually buy and change it into, argument's sake, 40 bed and breakfast units, but totally off the grid. And what actually happened there is like all those securities that we all talk about, and some, you know, like energy, like water, mobility, food, and income generating businesses, and human capital. How important is the human capital in this whole process? But what I would like highlight is really to say, I think the next shortfall that we'll see in South Africa is water and how we need to treat water. So we need to actually focus on grey water. We need to focus on retaining, keeping water and store water, reservoirs. Even if we sit next to the sea or the ocean, it doesn't matter. It's still cheaper to actually try to keep your own water on your site as on a reservoir and utilize that. And flay systems, there are so many other things we can do. So, and through this whole process to get to this off the grid in total, they coined the word of the most appropriate change. You know, if you want to just change for the sake of change, it'll cost you a lot of money. But you need to say, what is the most appropriate element that we can introduce for every different project, socioeconomic wise, soils, weather, climate, all those kind of things. Is what is the most appropriate to actually do?
Yes, maybe I could add on this. I totally agree with you. Here in Mauritius, we also have an issue on water availability. What we did is that we have a double network of water, one for the normal potable water, and we added a second network on all the city for grey water that could be used for other purposes than to drink the water. So each inhabitant is free when building its building to use the grey water and to connect whatever parts of the building he wants to, and to use the grey water for the common areas of the city. So that's a big advantage, and people really value the water management options.
And Stefan, maybe just linking the water and the cost points that were raised. Thanks, Steve. Those are also some excellent points about cost related to projects, and that people always want to know, what does it cost? And it's the question we get asked the most. And so we've really tried to direct some of our research into understanding what the costs are in South Africa of going green, so that we can enable and empower decision makers. But and I think it was a good example, we shouldn't be asking what is the cost of going green, we should be asking what is the cost of not going green. So if you have an office that cannot continue with business because there's no water, or you're not attracting the right type of tenants and you can't ensure business continuity, what does that cost? And are you including that in your financial feasibility? And when we think about the transition risks that are increasingly being costed in from an investment perspective in the future, I think that's actually the real question we should be asking ourselves on these projects.
Georgina, we're doing a big, we've just bought a very prominent landmark up Caller Drive for Baldwin's new head office, and we're renovating it, increasing the bulk. And one of your previous judges, I won't mention his name now, is actually the architect. And I said to him, you've got to go full-blown 6-star rating. And it's all about the drive and the lateral thinking to do it, because it's not that difficult to make things work. It really isn't. But if we all pull together, we can make this world a much better place. This panel that you've got here today, Stefan, I don't know how you do it sometimes. You're a genius at putting these people together. But it's people like this that really need to collaborate and get together and work together. I'm going to be jumping on a plane soon and visiting Charles and Lucas. And I'm definitely as soon as we allowed for international travel, Karim, I'm going to come and drive you mad in Dubai. Definitely. And Stefan, I can drive people mad, eh?
I would never have thought, Steve.
Sorry, Steph, just a quick one. I just want to go back to what Rory asked. He said, you know, are our governments getting involved? Are they?
Yes, they are, Charles, big time, big time.
But here in Durban, what we need, I mean, we don't have tariffs on our electrical yet. So, for instance, you know, making, you know, ice packages to make aircon, make ice on a night and use it during the day. We don't have tariff changes. We don't have the ability to tie back into the grid yet for solar harvesting. We don't have, there's a lot of simple things and mechanisms, quite easy mechanisms that need to be put in place to facilitate that. And I think, you know, it's obviously nice to hear that Steve's saying there are. Maybe Joburg, that's a little bit more ahead of the game versus where we are in Durbs. But I think that's something that's going to change. And I think we should hopefully see that change over the next 6-8 months. And that'll make a massive difference to how we plan developments. You know, because if you can't tie back into the grid on solar, there's no point doing it. And then that's you forming this sort of bad habit, you know, going forward, development to development.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Charles, I think we need to get together because, you know, I had tea with the president. I was invited for tea with our president the other day, and I took my son along as a secretary, which he thought was quite amusing. And the president said to me, Steve, you know, is there anything that I can help you with that you need for Borwin? And my son just went like this and said, no. So, yeah. So Charles, yeah, I think we need to get together. You know, I have a very good relationship with our president, and I always make him laugh, which is quite important, him and Dr. Corsi. So, you know, I think we need to start pushing them a little bit. You know, I've been quite humble up to now. I promise you I have been, Steph, when he's asked. So I think now, you know, and I think he's begging me to actually be a bit more forthright. So Charles, you know, Lucas, guys, we need to maybe put a short list together. We don't want to drive him mental. You know, I don't want to go to him about my parking fine or something. But I think we need to ask him. He's a bright guy. He's an innovative guy. You know, we recently launched our one development in Mooikloof, not the big one, another one. And they sent all the officials out to site, and they were an absolute delight. What I'm talking about, the lower level officials, well, not really that low level, but the level below Dr. Corsi, they were, Steph, they were fantastic on site with us, which is great to see. You know, in the past, we couldn't ever even get the mayor to come. I mean, we used to beg them. So it's just nice to see that Mr. Ramaphosa is getting through Dr. Corsi, who's a great friend of mine, a real great guy. He's really kicking some butt and getting the guys out there, which is good to see.
Yeah. Lucas, I know you put your hand up there. Just one last wrap up, and we're going to have to close soon. But I think also back to Charles's point, I think that would be a game changer both for developers and for end users, which is what the end game's got to be.
Okay. Thank you, Stefan. You know, with about 60% of Africa live in slums, I think the challenge that we have in South Africa even is to see how we can do an integration of a new smart city with those people, everybody included, to make a community, a new balanced community. And I really want to, with all these people around the panel, want to think about how do we do it. At the moment, you can look at Kigali City in Rwanda, and they've done a thing where urban living is optimized, and education and high tech. So perhaps, you know, like we said, it's the socioeconomics of countries that actually predict which way we go.
Yeah, I agree, Lucas. So again, I think just thank you to everyone for the input. I know in the State of the Nation address by the President in 2019, he spoke, I think his words were, is it not time for South Africa to build a smart city founded on the technologies of the fourth industrial revolution? And the reality is, with minds like this around a table, we can make progress, and we can make serious in terms of how we can make a better landscape for more people, empower more property ownership, bring costs down. And I think that becomes the end game. So, I mean, I'm unbelievably inspired by the panel we have in front of us. Samuel, Karim, really appreciate your time. Exceptional work you guys are doing. And I think between developers like Charles and Steve, and then the real role players like Lucas and Georgina locally, I really believe we can make some serious headway. I know there have been lots of different questions. Apology we haven't got to all of them. I know that sentiment that was about Gregory in France, about how you can bring the cost down. I know Karen van Deventer has asked about whether we can do another webinar like this. We are going to be doing our webinars once a month and making sure that when we do them, that the topics are unbelievably relevant, and that we've got panels like this, you can do justice to the topic. So yes, Karen, absolutely. We've been inundated with people sharing ideas around topics. We ask you to keep sharing those ideas, sending them to info@rainmakermarketing.co.za so we can make sure that we do topics that are aligned, and we do them once a month, and we really, really have engaging discussions like we have today. There will be a recording. We'll be sending a mail to you guys shortly. All of you who are in the next day, all of you have registered. You can share that on. Yeah, I mean, wonderful content, and really, really grateful for all of your time.
And Steph, sorry, on behalf of all the people here, I'd like to thank you, because, you know, you guys don't get thanked enough. I think what you guys are doing, and your lovely ladies behind the scene, Steph, thank you very much. Now, you guys are legend. You really, to put this panel together, I take my bloody hat off to you guys. On behalf of the panelists, we want to thank you. Sorry, guys, I took the liberty of that. But thank you very much, Steph.
No, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, you.
Steve, much appreciated. So
Thanks,
yeah,
Steve.
thanks to all of you for listening, all of you being part of it, and we hope you have a wonderful week ahead.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.